Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to ABACUS Bootcamp, a session that was presented at Winter Institute 2026 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
We've just skipped our description, but I'm trusting that everyone has read the description, and that's why you're here. ABACUS is ABA's annual benchmarking survey of member store data. It's mostly financial data. We're going to be talking through what the survey is, how to complete it, and how to use the data that you get to help you make decisions in your stores. So we have to do a little housekeeping. Slides and handouts are here. By here, we mean in the app, and Emma's working on getting those in there. The survey's also in the app, as we learned. All the recordings, this session's being recorded. All the recordings for Winter Institute will be on BookWeb and on Booked, which is the education department's section of BookWeb, so you get there kind of the same way. Please turn your cell phones off or silence them. And if you have questions, we are going to take questions throughout the session. If you have questions, just raise your hand and wait for Emma to bring you the mic so that we can make sure that your voice is on the recording. Okay, that. The all-important antitrust guidelines. This is probably your first session at this institute, but you'll get this message at every session throughout the week. We are encouraging all kinds of knowledge sharing and advice among booksellers, but the Sherman Antitrust Act prohibits you all from discussing pricing and price policies, boycotts, and dividing up the market. Okay, introductions. So again, I'm Lauren Zaborski. I'm with ABA, and our panel is going to introduce themselves.
Starting with me. Okay, hello. I'm Paul Hansen. I'm one of the co-owners of Village Books and Paper Dreams in Bellingham, Washington. We have that's a 15,000 square foot store. And then we have a second location in Linden, Washington, and that's a 3,500 square foot store. So we get kind of both levels of financials we get to look at. Also, I'm going to give a quick disclaimer. This is my first time ever wearing a bow tie. My lovely wife bought this for me from the Frick Museum yesterday, and I thought if I'm going to talk numbers, I want to look knowledgeable.
I feel a little underdressed now. My name is Allison Hill, and I'm the ABA CEO, and I used to be a bookseller, so I have worked for a few different bookstores in my career. I worked for Waterstones when they had street stores in Boston for a long time. And then I worked for Book Soup, which is in West Hollywood, California, and is a smaller store. And then went to work for Vroman's, which some of you know is a very large store that then went and bought Book Soup when they were closing. So I have always been on the side of ABACUS of using the data. I was not the person in my store filling out the survey, so I have to admit that to all of you. But I was the person who pored over those results and used them for all kinds of things that we're going to talk about today. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you.
My name's Stephanie Leach. I'm with Weller Bookworks in Salt Lake City, Utah. We're a 96-year-old bookstore. And in July, I'll get to my 25 years as a bookseller. So kind of crazy. Almost a quarter of our total, more than a quarter of our total lifespan as a bookstore. I've been there. So yeah, I do. I'm our office manager, operations manager, and I also do art and design, physical design for the store.
Okay, great. So our session objectives. We're really hoping that you all gain some more familiarity with ABACUS as a tool, both how to fill it out, what you need to gather and put together, and the time needed to complete the survey each year, but also how to use the data, how it's useful in your decision-making about your store. We wanted to just quickly poll the room to see how familiar everyone is with ABACUS. Can you raise your hand if you've never completed ABACUS before? Okay.
Great.
And if you have completed it maybe a few times, anybody here who would consider themselves an ABACUS expert? Okay, great.
Those of you who've used it a few times, you've filled out the survey? Have you felt like you really used the results in a robust manner? And I'm seeing Sheeval shaking her. Okay, that it makes sense. That we hear that from a lot of people, which is why we wanted to do this session. So I think that's a good place to start.
Great. Okay, so we're going to start by zooming out and talking about data and why you need data, and particularly good data. Then we're going to talk about what ABACUS data looks like and what ABACUS results can give you. And then we are going to spend some time talking about just providing some tips for how to complete it, the survey. Okay. So at ABA, we use data almost every day. Allison and I work very closely together. And anytime we're looking at a budget or we're assessing our education programming or we're planning ahead or thinking strategically, we're looking for good data points to help guide those decisions. You guys are probably all doing this in your store to some degree every day as well. Not all data is created equal. Some data is great, some data is not so great. What we want to focus on in this session is honing in on what's good data. So good data is data that would be relevant, timely, reliable and accurate, and also actionable. And actionable is that's where ABACUS comes in. Good data can help you transform uncertainty into clarity. It helps you see trends. It helps you see red flags. It can help you pivot when you need to change course, as we've had to do with Winter Institute. And one of the things that I find in my work is that using data and working with data is especially helpful in establishing benchmarks and goals, and then kind of tracking your progress towards your goals. So ABACUS is a great resource for your data toolbox. Here's some data. So it's sometimes easier to talk about data when it's presented visually. So what we're looking at here is 5 years of comparative data of a fictional Your Store as compared to all the stores that reported to ABACUS in those same years. And does everybody know what gross margin is? Yes? No? Okay. So gross margin is one of the performance metrics that is part of your ABACUS survey. It's one of the data points that comes back to you. Basically, what gross margin is it's the revenue that's left over after you take out the cost of the materials that you've sold, expressed as a percentage. So you can see in this example that fictional Your Store is kind of tracking behind the benchmarks and getting worse and worse and worse in the prior 5 years. So what does this tell you, right? It raises questions. What's going on here? In this situation, there's a couple different things that could be happening. Your sales could be tracking lower, your revenue is tracking lower, your cost of goods could be tracking higher, or some combination of both. When we were thinking about this session and developing it, one of the things that Paul raised was that sometimes what you see, the issue isn't with the numbers itself, that there's something else going on. It might be the way that you're inputting the data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our store is Village Books and Paper Dreams. We have a lot of gift, and so we have a lot of control over our margin. And we would have, this almost illustrates what we've been looking at in our store with our cost of goods, where we expected it to be much higher than it was, because when we saw that our cost of goods was too low or lower than we expected, we said, okay, let's look at freight. Are we not accounting for freight? How's our pricing doing? We just looked at all of these different areas that affected our cost of goods to see, if there was something we could fix. So we kept fixing all the things, and our cost of goods was staying pretty low. It was an indicator that the way we were tracking in our accounting, which I'm like Allison, I didn't put the numbers in. I can't explain to you why it was wrong, but we did a deep dive. We hired a consultant to say, and finally figured out this is how we are tracking our cost of goods in a way that's really not reflective of what our actual cost of goods are. So it narrowed it down from our business practices to how we're handling our data, and got us to be a lot more accurate.
This is such a great example of what I loved about ABACUS results when I was using them, because I think in bookselling, you're such in firefighting mode every day, right? You're just trying to get to the next day. And often I got really obsessive about year over year sales, and having the opportunity to pull back and look at not just year over year, but the year before and the year before. And then in relation to how all the other stores are doing, gives you kind of a broader view and can help you realize it's almost like the frog in the water. Like, is the water heating up and I didn't realize it? Is this part of a bigger trend? So I think this slide is a great example, and you could use gross margin. You could use practically any part of ABACUS and look at it in that way. But it really gives you a kind of more insightful view of your data.
Okay. You want to wait for the mic? She's coming.
I'm just going to pre-apologize now for the 10 billion questions I will inevitably ask. So when you're talking about the data, was it the fact that you were entering it wrong, or you weren't entering the right information in the right way? Like, what do you mean when you say that you were looking at it and you weren't getting the results that you wanted because the data wasn't telling you?
That is such a valid question, and it's an answer that our accountant could answer much better than I. All I could do as a person who was monitoring the numbers and wanting to get the right results was to keep asking the questions.
Okay.
And of the people who know how that works, and say, okay, so, and just delved more.
Okay.
When we discovered this a year ago, I could wrap my head around it a whole lot better than I can explain to you now. It was like calculus or quantum physics to me.
Okay.
I understand it in the moment, but afterwards I couldn't explain it.
Okay.
But yeah, it helped them to understand it, to be able to tweak
Okay.
how they're doing the account.
Thank you.
I think sometimes sometimes it's as simple as you look at something and it seems so wrong, and then it turns out you literally just entered the wrong information. But I think sometimes it's how you were categorizing certain things, or like thinking about like co-op, or trying to think of another example. Different stores may categorize it differently. So sometimes it's helping you kind of get your ducks in a row, which we're going to talk about that later. But get your ducks in a row in terms of how you're organizing your financials and thinking about your financials. Sometimes it's an error, but sometimes it's an indicator of some other problem. And I think as we move along, we'll have some examples.
I have a theoretical response to this. Actually, this kind of comes from my experience with my bookstore. So we weren't accurately representing our cost of goods for sidelines or gifts because it was getting lumped into our cost of goods for new. So that would explain why the cost of goods was lower than it should be in sidelines and gifts. Mm-hmm. So I could assume that that's might be the case.
Okay, we're going to move on. So what's ABACUS? For those of you who don't know, this is ABA's annual benchmarking survey of mostly financial, but some statistical and just other information that we collect from members every year. The survey opens up usually in the late spring. We're going to try to open up in the middle of May this year. Stores have 2 or 3 months to complete the data. You are using the information from the prior fiscal year. So usually that's a calendar year. So when we open up the survey in May, you'll be entering data from 2025. We contract with a company. It's a a research analytics firm called Industry Insights, who collects all the data, crunches all the numbers, and then after a few months gives us a report. We have a couple of different reports that come out. There's a consolidated report of all store data that we publish on BookWeb. Individual stores also get their own report cards, which we're going to talk about in a second. ABACUS for ABA is very important because it's how we take the pulse of how the industry is doing. We can see what the dominant trends are, what the big risks are, and we use that information to make decisions about our programming and the resources that we're producing. ABACUS also has a lot to offer booksellers. You can see peer comparisons, you can see trends, risks, also opportunities. You get access to the aggregated report. You also get your individual store report. And there's data tables that you can actually export and manipulate. So this is a very summarized picture, like a little snapshot of what the individual store report card looks like. Anybody who's completed it is probably relatively familiar with this. It just basically shows what your metrics are next to everybody else. The individual store report cards are actually 13 pages long. They have like multiple comparisons in different segments. But we find this to be really helpful, the report card format to be really helpful. If you're looking at it, strong means like aces, just you're doing great. Good, keep rocking, you're still ahead of the curve. Fair is the least favorable mark, that we don't go below fair. There's no abysmal. And yeah, so I think a lot of stores find this to be helpful just as like a kind of like a short snapshot of like, okay, here's me in relation to everybody else.
Can I jump in just for a second?
Absolutely.
With the, as a demonstration of the significance of the slicing and dicing, it has stores over a certain square footage and also a certain level of sales. And so we can compare apples to apples. We can look at our larger store and see how that compares. And then we can look at our smaller store and see how that compares. Or we can look at it together, the two stores together. But it allows us to look at those different comparisons in relation to each other more accurately.
You can also slice it in relation to cost of living. So there's a question about livable wage, and you can kind of compare to other stores that are in areas that have a similar livable wage, because that can be a really relevant factor. Emma, I think we have a question over here. And while we're walking the mic, I just wanted to add, ABACUS also is one of your big ABA benefits. ABA spends about $50,000 a year all in to produce this. So it makes you realize how valuable this data is.
Hi. At the NABA conference I went to, it was brought up the potential to include something for mobile bookstores. Has that been added by chance? Like a factor for that?
We would love to have more data from mobile and pop-up stores. Right now we are collecting it. We're just not getting enough for it to be meaningful in any way. Right. So spread the word. And we did get some data. I mean, it's been increasing as the number of stores increases. It's just not significant enough to really indicate a trend yet. So maybe you can help us spread the word and we'll do better this next time around. Yeah,
we've been contributing to ABACUS. I've worked in 2 different stores, and each one has been contributing since the very beginning. At the very beginning, it was probably a harder sell for bookstores to do it. The reason we did it right off the bat was because of the advocacy and realizing that they needed to have a good representation of information in order to serve us better. And then a couple of years down the pike, then we started seeing the return, and it was well worth it.
Sorry. I can confirm you go a little lower than fair because mine showed up with a lot of weeks. But that's because, to your point, there were some things that I just plain filled out wrong. Like my store's numbers are not that bad, but the ratios ended up being very poor looking because of the way I input the data. So even if you're performing well, if you don't know how to input it, as I did not, which is why I'm here, it can look terrible. So it is important to know exactly what you're putting into each of those fields, which I'm hoping we'll cover a little bit today.
Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Yeah. Do you have?
We don't have an individual store report because we're ABA. so we're using it. We're working from a sample to produce this. Yeah.
Yeah. The information, we never see your data. We just see the reports. So that's really good for us to know because we didn't know that. Can you think of an example of one of the categories going back to that earlier question?
Yeah, let me pull mine up.
Okay.
So the total other operating expenses looked terrible because I was shifting some stuff that should have been cost of goods sold, where I looked fantastic, that really should have been considered operating expenses. And so that sort of flipped on its head. And some of those things, like I wasn't sure about, whether to include freight and things like that because I'm naive and I didn't know. So now I'll know different for the next time, but knowing exactly what goes into each of those KPIs, my accountant and I had a long conversation about, should we put this here or should we put it there? And we made the wrong call.
Yeah. So that illustrates just having that discipline and that, the place to go through that exercise is a place to learn from it and be better with your numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of the utility of ABACUS.
Yeah.
I would also say, as someone who's filled it out and seen that red indicator as well, sometimes it's not that you filled it out wrong.
Maybe we should change the color scheme.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But no, sometimes it's not that you filled it out wrong, but just the report doesn't fit your store's metrics. Like, for example, we have a cafe. And so our sales per employee is always red.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to account the person I'm paying at my store now who also sells coffee at the same time they sell books.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So sometimes the red is just red and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you.
Anything else? No. Okay.
Oh, that's me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how ABACUS lets you move from kind of your gut instinct to really focusing on real numbers and what they mean. And a good example I have is I helped a store a few weeks ago. Someone reached out to me and asked me to look at their P&L, and we went over everything together. And when I talked to her, it was really clear, like, she knew her financials and she was very financially literate, super sharp. And as she talked about her business, it was really interesting. And one of the huge advantages she had is she doesn't pay rent. So you can all take a moment to feel jealous of the store. She doesn't pay rent, right? So in her head, she knew she was paying her staff a little bit more because she wasn't paying rent. And so that had become kind of her, her frame for all of her numbers. And it wasn't until we put her numbers up against ABACUS and looked, and sure enough, she was paying less than the benchmark on rent, more on payroll, but she knew that, right? And intuitively, she knew all of that, but she also felt like something was wrong. Like she was running out of cash, like something, intuitively, she knew something was up. And when we laid them side by side, it was her operating expenses that were significantly over the benchmark. And that kind of opened a door for her to walk through, where when she started digging into that, she found pockets of expenses that, for whatever reason, bandwidth or her attention has been elsewhere, kind of she realized, oh, wow, something seems off in all these areas. Now, she may have discovered, like you did, in some of them as she dug in, that, oh, but that just is because I have this or that. But in other instances, she found where she was really overpaying, or where she didn't know about a discount that ABA has with a business partner, or a variety of other things. So it's a great example of how you can have feelings or a gut instinct about your numbers, but having that data and being able to look at benchmarks gives you a completely different view that can be much more, to Lauren's earlier point, much more immediate and actionable. I also think when we talk about ABACUS, there's the feeling of when you first start, there's so much going on when you first open a store that you're thinking, I can't think about that right now. And sometimes we talk to stores who don't start ABACUS for a couple of years. Those of you who haven't done ABACUS yet, have any of you been in business more than 2 years? Okay. So great example, right? You're obviously doing fine. You're here, right? But now you have this opportunity to kind of stop and pause and catch your breath and really look at your numbers in a new way. For new stores, you can't report until you have some comparable data. But for stores that have been around longer, it really starts to become meaningful really, really quickly. So if you're opening a store or your new store, you can use the ABACUS report for learning and planning. It's a great way to start thinking about inventory and dollars per square footage and how much stock you're going to need and things like that. A great
Cost of goods sold.
Yes, a great example is cost of goods sold. Getting your head around, whether or not you should be buying just from Ingram, for example, or spreading out and ordering more from publishers to improve your cost of goods. That's something we see a lot when a store first opens. They set up an account with Ingram. It may take them a while to get set up with the publishers. And sometimes a year, 2 years, 3 years passes and you kind of look up and go, oh, I never set up those accounts. So that's usually one of the first indicators of, oh, wait, stop. This is something to look at. This is something to prioritize. So I think in the beginning, ABACUS can be really helpful to estimating sales and inventory needs and space optimization. And then you have that kind of year 2 to 5 or maybe longer for some of you where you can establish a really critical baseline by using ABACUS. I think the example that we used was co-op and bookshop.org. So bookshop.org is a really great example. The store I helped, this came up with this person where the bookshop.org revenue was coming from 2 places. Those of you who participate know that through your ABA membership, you get a piece of the bookshop pool just by signing up. But you can also have a bookshop page as an affiliate and earn 30% off of those book sales, which hopefully many of you are doing. But her numbers were less than the average. So it begged the question of whether she was optimizing her relationship with Bookshop. So we took a look at it. And I think this was a good example of where she had her Bookshop page. She knew to set it up. And then she was a few years down the road and had kind of let it just be this passive thing, which is understandable with everything else going on. And when we looked at it, it wasn't very current. She has a really strong brand and voice. And it wasn't really being reflected on her page. And so she made some very small changes. And within a few weeks, her bookshop sales doubled every week for the next 4 weeks that I talked to her. So that's a great example of something that, just got lost in the mix, lost in the day-to-day firefighting. And then ABACUS and that conversation helped her focus on, oh, wow, here's an opportunity I may be missing. The other is co-op, and that's another thing that I'm sure, how many people are submitting their co-op regularly to publishers to get display money or event money? Only a couple of hands, so and maybe some half hands. That's a great example of where you get up and running and maybe a couple of years in, you haven't really taken advantage of the fact that the publishers will give you credit for displaying certain books or, hosting certain events, that type of thing. Or maybe you even have a relationship where you're getting a percentage of the purchase with the publisher back as a credit. Or maybe you're putting in for the co-op, but you haven't collected it. I know at my store, that was always a big deal. We were constantly watching to make sure we got the credits. And ABACUS was one of the ways we could kind of track that. So I think in that 2 to 5 year, range, those are some of the benefits of ABACUS. And then you get into, the stores that have been around a while. And I see some of the people in the room. So I know you've been running these stores for a while, right? And maybe you haven't gone back and done ABACUS because you haven't had the time, or maybe you thought, I don't really need this. I seem to be doing okay. I think with those stores, sorry.
Want to move forward?
No, go back one just for a second.
Oh, that was co-op.
Oh, okay. So stay where you are. I'm just having trouble seeing the screen.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. For those stores, what I said before about pulling back and looking at 5 years, being able to start establishing trends and how you're comparing to the benchmark over time, looking at net sales, net profit, really digging into these things becomes really critical because you are now looking for the trends over time. You're looking for, did I just have a bad year or am I on a trajectory that indicates a decline that should make me nervous? Is it a downturn? Is it growth? Are you facing crisis? I think sales up but net profit lagging can be something that you might realize if you're a store that's been around a little bit longer. That's happened with several stores I've talked to where they were running into cash flow problems, but their sales were up and they were trying to figure out why that would be. Or, your sales are up, but your net profit isn't up in proportion. And I'm sure a lot of you in the room have been experiencing that in recent years, right? Because we've had this great rally around local bookstores, and over year for 2025 over 2024, many of you told us your sales were up, but your costs are rising at a higher rate, right? But putting it into that larger context becomes really important. I think at this stage too, ABACUS also can help you figure out if maybe your inventory is building up at a faster rate than your financial support. You can be looking at labor allocation, occupancy costs. There are a lot of things to focus in on at that stage. Emma, I think we have a question up here at the front. Thank you for letting me.
Oh, no, you're fine. Okay.
Okay.
So to me, looking at that, my brain is like, okay, that's all the numbers, but what does that mean? Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that kind of goes back to the, how do you know what to put in? And when you get the numbers that look like that, my brain is just, oh, look, a bunch of zeros and numbers that I don't understand what that means.
Yeah.
So how do we take that data that you guys give us like this and understand what we're looking at?
Okay. That's a great question. You're kind of playing detective, right? You're starting to look at the numbers, and it is really easy to get distracted, just numbers, zeros, ones, like you're saying, right? But if we look at this and if I was looking at this store and I was looking at the net profit for my store, what I'm seeing is that my net profit was going up there for a couple of years. It came back down. So it's kind of fluctuating, right? And it's staying within a certain range. So my first question is, okay, is that just me, or is that makes sense in the context of the other indies? So looking at it in relation to that, I can see that other stores have kind of been moving the same pattern, right? So that gives you some reassurance, perhaps. But I also see that in 2024, I'm lagging behind a little bit. I was lagging a little bit behind in 2023, in 2022, and 2021. So even though overall the trend is kind of the same, I'm still lagging behind. So if I'm playing detective, that would kind of get my attention and make me go back through and look at individual lines now, right? Because now I'm looking at, well, how did I get to that net profit? If I start way up here, is it in the cost of goods? Are my cost of goods much higher than other stores? And is that, if I pull that down, is that how I ended up here? So my cost of goods are higher. Maybe I need more non-book product, which will give me a better margin. Or maybe I need to make sure I'm ordering more direct to publishers, so I'm getting extra points. Am I taking advantage of backlist specials? Am I signed up for Book Love with Ingram, so they can set goals for me? And if I beat them year over year, I get extra points. Like all these different things. And to that point, because if I were you, my next question was, well, how would I know what all those things are, right? So there's a lot of great resources on BookWeb on our education page. There's specific ones that I would recommend. One is Decoding the P&L, which will walk you through a P&L and kind of explain how what the P&L terminology is, how it works, how it fits together. Another one is a great one that we did. Some of you saw it on the fall shows. It's on KPIs, key performance indicators, and 5 that you should be tracking in turbulent times. So it kind of focuses you, because that's the other thing. When you first get the report, if you're new to it, it's a lot. So let us help you prioritize and maybe start there. And then to Paul's point, as you get used to ABACUS and you get your numbers in a row and you'll get more accustomed to it, and you'll be able to pull back and look at more. But starting with those 5 KPIs is really helpful.
Can I add something real quick? So just an accounting tip there. In 2020, the benchmark was a negative net profit percentage. So that bookstore example was actually doing better than the benchmark.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up question was, we get the report and you're like me going, ooh, numbers, okay. I mean, do we have the option to call you guys and be like, help me understand what I'm looking at?
Please call us. Okay. Yes, we strongly encourage, you can reach out to Lauren, you can reach out to me. You can always write the membership team at info@bookweb.org and they'll connect you with someone. When Abacus first comes out, you can meet with Industry Insights. They'll talk to you about it. We also do education sessions. As soon as the report comes out, there'll be a series of sessions that Lauren will host where you can sit on a call and walk through it with other people and ask questions and hear other people's questions, which is really helpful too.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and what I meant to say was parentheses means negative in accounting world. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Go ahead.
You brought up bookshop.org. And my question is how does that relate to net sales when you're do you put it in the top line to calculate cost of goods sold? Because
it does
for
not go in the top line.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, when you were bringing that up and
just like when you're looking at your net profit.
It's a other income. Got it.
Other income. Yep, you have it right. Yeah. Yeah, we treat Bookshop as other income since you all are effectively it's passive income for you, right? It's like a third source. Yeah. Good question. Thank you. And then the stores who have been around a really long time, sometimes people have been using Abacus. They don't feel like they need it anymore, so they stop using it. And I don't know if there are any of those stores in this room, but we really encourage people to keep using it. Number one, as I said, you are watching for trends. So doing it year over year really matters. But number two, it's about being a good citizen in the industry. We really need this data. Everyone in this room needs this data. ABA needs this data. So by continuing to participate, you're really contributing to the industry and supporting a lot of our advocacy efforts on your behalf. It also becomes important when you go to sell your store. And I think we have an example here.
Yeah.
I've helped a couple stores this year try to put together deals to sell their stores. And what's hard when you're selling to, say, a customer who's always wanted to own your bookstore, and they come from the business world and they look at your numbers and they think, oh, this store is not doing well because they don't know what our numbers look like, right? So this is a great example. When you look at the net profit compared to the general retail sector, general retail, 2 to 4%, your store's average is 1.9%. The buyer may be thinking that doesn't seem like the store is doing very well. But then if you look at it in relation to the ABACUS benchmark, you find out this store is performing better than average for our industry. So it gives your potential buyer the context that they need to evaluate your business and hopefully keeps them engaged so that you can have bigger conversations about what your store would mean to them if they bought it.
So we opened our store in April of 24.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. And we asked about Abacus and I cannot remember who it was who said, yeah, go ahead and fill it out. We know it's going to be incomplete. 25, we did the very scary thing. We expanded 800 more square feet in October. So our Christmas of 24 is not going to be the Christmas of 25 because that's our bread and butter. I mean, that's a lot of income for those 2 months.
Right.
So we're going to run through Abacus again, but I have a fear our numbers are going to be skewed.
Yeah.
Is there an option to put when it says, what is your square footage for 10 months out of the year? Do I put down 1,800 or no, I'm sorry, 1,200, or do I put down the 1,800 after we expanded?
I see your question. Lauren.
So, yeah, I mean, you're going to have an anomalous year in there. Your first year was anomalous because it was partial. Your second is anomalous because you expanded. So I think you could do it either way. You could do the starting square footage for the year for 2025 or the ending square footage, or you could average it out and just understand that when you get the data back, it's going to be a little wacky. You probably won't start seeing those regular years for another couple of years anyway. So it's great that you're making all those changes in the beginning.
If I was in your shoes, I would probably put in the square footage that I was planning to have the following year and going forward. Unless you plan to expand and contract and expand and contract, then we keep it at I would say put in the 800 extra square footage.
Right, because then your 26 numbers are going to be more comparable to your 25 numbers. Yeah.
I think Stephanie.
I would probably do an average myself, or if you were there 3/4 of the time, calculate that percentage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Different ways to go about it.
And make sure you put a note on that year. This is why it's an anomaly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'll
because
forget in 10
you may
years.
not remember. Yeah.
But it's another example of how the numbers tell the story, right?
Are there any stores in the room that are somewhere in the spectrum of time that I mentioned in terms of how many years you've been in business where you still feel like, I'm not quite sure why we would do this? Do you feel like some of the examples I gave you could relate to, or do people have questions about it? How many people have been in business over 10 years? A lot of, okay.
I might speak to that just a little bit. Our use of Abacus has changes from year to year. When we bought this, so the store opened in 1980. We bought the store from the founders in 2017, and at that time we were probably the most fearful that we didn't know what we were getting into. So we did deep dives into Abacus for the few years around that, and went to the boot camps and did all the education because we wanted to be really conversant in how the numbers related to each other. Then we got better at it. We still kept doing it, but then we were more looking for the outliers, and we didn't have to look at it with such depth all the time. So now we use it more like a sniper rather than a shotgun approach. Right now, well, actually, I'll tell you later at the very end what we're looking to get out of it this year.
We're anticipating it.
Yeah. Stick around to the very end.
We were going to take a break now and let everybody move around and get
Step
some
outside.
Yeah, maybe go outside,
Get some cool air.
off for about 10 minutes. So come back here at 10:30.
And for anyone looking for the slides on the app, they are now available.
Woohoo.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Emma. And you're welcome to come up and talk to us and ask questions if you want during the break.
We're going to start by talking about some of the questions that we got up at the table during the break.
Yeah, there were some great questions during the break, so we just want to respond to the whole room in case other people had the same questions. There were some questions about bookshop.org and how to kind of optimize your affiliate relationship with them. So we would definitely recommend you see them while you're here. They are in room 330, which is across the Sky Bridge. And I'm sure they'd be delighted to help you. I also mentioned Ingram's Book Love. So for those of you who are not familiar with the program, it's really simple. You sign up. They know what you spent with them last year. If you beat it the next year, you get extra discount. So it can be as passive or as active as you choose, but it's definitely worth signing up. Ingram has 4 tables just past the welcome desk. So we would encourage you to talk to them about that. And then someone asked about co-op. We don't have a co-op session this year at Winter Institute. We do have a great recording. And so we will look at attaching that to the slides for this so that people have access to that recording. Jenny from Wacoma Books is on that panel and does a great job explaining co-op and how you can take advantage of that. I also wanted to return to the great questions earlier about how do you know what goes in what categories. We were just talking about that's something we'll work on for this year's Abacus to help you, give you a little more detail. So the examples were things like freight shouldn't be going in operations. It should be going with your cost of goods because that's the cost of getting those goods to sell, right? So you have to kind of think it out. I see the looks on people's faces. I know you have to kind of think it through. Shopping bags that you're using that are just generic shopping bags that your customers are putting their books in and leaving with, those are an operating expense. That's a supply because they don't go in cost of goods because you don't necessarily need them to sell the goods, right? And then we already talked about Bookshop from that earlier good question that's not top line. That is additional revenue. So those were some great examples.
Yeah, I also got a question about whether you need to have completed your tax return and submit your tax return with your Abacus. Neither. You don't have to have completed a tax return to submit Abacus. Sometimes it's helpful. There's some information on your tax return that you can pull directly from your tax return to enter into Abacus, but it doesn't have to be done. And there's no supplemental materials that go with the survey. It's just a form that you are entering data points into as you go on a portal. I also got a question about the portal. The portal is where you submit your survey. It's also where all your reports live. When the survey opens, we'll email out the link to the portal. But in case you want to visit it now, if you want to see your old reports, it's abacusbenchmarking.com. We have it on a future slide. That's where all the old reports are from prior years, and also all the data tables and your individual store report card.
We also had a great question about how would I know about all these things if I wasn't in this session? You come to Winter Institute. That's how you find out about these things like Book Love and all the different things that we've talked about today. But short of that, we do have our regular virtual shop talks where a lot of these types of things come up. So if you ever have the chance to join us, those are really robust opportunities to hear from other stores what they're benefiting from and things that we might know about and can share with you.
Okay. So we're going to spend just a little bit of time talking about the survey itself. Again, the survey opens up in the spring. We change some of it every year, a little bit, but generally speaking, there are about 5 sections of the survey. The first section's really just information, where, number of locations. Are you mobile? Are you an online only store? Number of titles, distinct from number of SKUs, total transactions. We have a section that's dedicated to online sales and digital book selling. This is where your indie commerce sales or your other e-commerce sales are going to go, your bookshop dollars, ebook sales. Peer networking is really just a couple of check boxes where you're telling us which of your regionals you're involved in. The human resources section, this is where you're going to have all your personnel information. So we'll ask you to calculate your FTEs. We tell you how to do that. We will ask for salaries of some of the positions at your bookstore, some hours. Trying to think if there's anything else in that section. It's mostly just staffing and wages. Mm-hmm. The last section is the income statement. This is the one that requires you to pull all the information from your accounting system. You're going to enter your store sales. You're going to enter all of your expenses that are not personnel related. So all those operating expenses, occupancy, bags, office supplies, the cost of your phone and your internet are going to be in your operating expenses on the income statement.
I was just having a flashback to the first time I realized what FTE stood for.
Full-time equivalent.
And why that was important. Mm-hmm. And going and just that illustrated for me my journey along this path and figuring out what an FTE is. Why is that important to know? Oh, okay. And going through the ABACUS helped me to was my education in a lot of ways.
Right. Does everybody know what FTE is, what it means? So it's a standardized number to represent one full-time employee in your store working 2,080 hours in a year. So we have a way to help you calculate that because a lot of people work part-time, in your ABACUS survey.
It's really helpful. Like I've had stores over the years when I was in bookstores call me and say, how many buyers do you have? And I'd say I have 2. And they're like, we have 8. Oh my goodness, don't tell my buyers. This is a huge disparity. But when we looked at it and we broke it down to full-time equivalents, like they had someone who's working the sales floor and maybe buying 5 hours a week. And so then it became more apples to apples. But that's why it can be really important, especially if you're sharing information with other stores, just so you know.
A question.
You're good. Love questions.
So when you say buyers, are you talking about someone whose sole job is buying books for you? You're talking about people who work in the shop that sell books for the shop.
Oh, good question.
Can you clarify what that means?
Yeah. So when I was talking about buyers, I was talking about my last store was a large store, right? So there was a team of people whose only job was choosing the books that we purchased to sell in the store.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in a smaller store, you're probably wearing, I was going to say you're wearing every hat, right? You have, yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, it's a little bit different. It's a little harder to compare apples to apples, perhaps, as a sole operator. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so some helpful information to help you get started with Abacus. The kinds of things that you are going to find useful in completing the survey are reports from your accounting system, a P&L, a profit and loss, or an income statement, and a balance sheet. We actually don't ask for very much information from your balance sheet anymore on Abacus, but we do ask for inventory. And so your ending inventory value on December 31st is usually, that's a question on Abacus, and you get that from your balance sheet. Again, we're talking about the full prior fiscal year. So when you pull these reports or you ask your bookkeeper to pull the reports, you're going to be looking for all of 2025 to complete the survey that we open up in May. Tax return, again, a tax return can be helpful, especially if you have owner compensation. Your 1120 will have that broken out, so it can be slightly easier if you've done that already. But again, not necessary, and you don't submit your tax return with your Abacus survey. Other places that you might want to pull reports for, depending on what you're selling. Bookshop.org has a dashboard of reports. You go there and you can get your sales report. Indie Commerce also will allow you to pull a full year sales report. You can probably get something similar from any e-commerce site. Anything from Kobo or Libro, sales reports, payroll report, especially if you are working with a payroll company. Most of your payroll companies will be able to give you a full, it's usually called like a periodic payroll register for the full year that will give the salary amounts for each person, but also the hours that they worked. If you have part-time people, you'll need the hours to help calculate your FTEs. Credit card statements, bank statements, if you're paying for anything using an Amex card, it'll be helpful to have backup in case you need to kind of dig into the details. Some tips. I've spent a lot of time in my career, not in book selling, but in other areas, completing surveys just like Abacus. And I've always found it really helpful to look through the whole survey first before I start. So I know what I'm going to need to pull from what. I've had the experience of working through a multi-page survey, getting through about 3 pages of it, and then on page 4 realizing that I put something on page 2 that I really should be putting here, and then you kind of have to start all over again. Generally speaking, I think it saves time. You can also get a sense of what's being asked and see then if you can customize your accounting system reports or have your bookkeeper help you do that. I know there are POS vendors that will help you customize your POS reports for things like breaking out the different classes of transactions and sales. I think keeping a workbook to track or some kind of tracking document to track where you put which thing each year will help, because you're only doing it once a year. You're going to forget, did I include that thing with that thing in operating expenses, or did I put it somewhere else? And consistency is really important with these things because you're comparing things, your numbers year over year. You can even put your portal passwords in a little document somewhere so you don't forget what your bookshop.org dashboard login is. And then always check the Abacus page on BookWeb. It's bookweb.org/Abacus. And we are working on a whole new slate of resources that'll be up before the 2025 survey opens that will answer some of these questions, like, where do you put which thing, and maybe how to set up your general ledger so that you can pull easier reports for Abacus.
We mentioned the education sessions that Lauren will do after Abacus report comes out, but when it opens, Lauren and/or Industry Insights will also be offering sessions that you can zoom in and just walk through filling it out together, or, hear some of these tips. Again, you can still call just for help mean, even Industry Insights will sit on the call with you and walk you through it. So we encourage you to reach out for help the first time, especially.
So we want to talk a little bit about how you can use Abacus data in your store. Maybe our panelists want to talk about some things here.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first off, before I jump into one of the practical ways that I use this, one of the things that Abacus and greater living with the numbers for a greater length of time is that understanding the relationship of the numbers, because especially in 2020, when our sales shrank significantly, but the health of the business was still dependent upon how the numbers related to each other rather than just that number of sales. So one of the things that I particularly keep an eye on is our payroll as a percentage to sales. Behind cost of goods, payroll is the most significant expense and also the thing that you have the most control over. So I spend a whole lot of time looking at that, and I use the benchmark from Abacus to give me a target and let me know how our business is stacked up against the rest of the businesses across the country. So is it too high? Is it too low? Is it comparable? But just knowing at the end of the year whether you've hit the benchmark isn't enough. You really have to look at it every week and every month. And so in order to monitor payroll as a percentage of sales, I have to give myself notes here. I love Excel spreadsheet for this because first you have a line for what your total labor is for each month and then adding that up for the whole year. So you track your total labor. You also monitor your total hours scheduled per week and per month, and then for the total. And then you also monitor hours worked versus hours scheduled, because that will show what reality versus what your theory is. And then you monitor your sales for each month and each week. And I've got this going all the way across, and I can see each week if we've hit that target, or each month how we've hit that target. We schedule by the month, and so we can see we scheduled X number of hours for the month total. Divide by 4.33 is an average per week, so we can see how many hours a week we have scheduled. And putting all of that information in there, you can see how they relate to each other. You can give yourself a budget of hours, but you can't really give yourself a budget of payroll. So you can use hours to influence how you're doing your daily schedules. And if you realize that your payroll as a percentage to sales is too high, you have choices. You can either increase your sales. How are you going to do that? You can increase efficiency with the people that you have and create an hours budget, or you can decrease the number of employees. I say that in that order because we don't want to decrease. We have made the intention. We don't want to decrease our number of employees. So how are we going to justify the hours that we have, or how do we keep those hours under control? It's also really helpful when it's time to hire. That was one of those biggest questions. We have 42 to 45 employees is our standard, about 31 full-time equivalent. So we have some control over the number of people that we have. But it feels like we need more employees. Great. How many? How many does that mean? You can look at your hours. You can look at your payroll as a percentage to sales. And if you have that information, you can make that a data-driven decision for how many hours you're hiring for. And so when we have a pool of people that we're hiring, they say, how many people are you hiring? We have to answer with the full-time equivalent. We're hiring X number of hours. We might hire 2 20-hour-a-week people. We might hire 1 40-hour-a-week person. So having that to give us the information to be able to control hours and hire for hours is extremely helpful. Was that too many words?
So it's interesting because Abacus is there's the process of filling out the survey and the results, and they're both enlightening. Actually, I find that the process of filling it out reinforces my understanding of a profit and loss statement, the anatomy of it, and the sort of story it tells. So now I forget the question we're answering here, how we use it. So I kind of use it in a really hands-on way. So I'm coming from entering it and reinforcing what I know about it. So when you are putting that in, so you kind of break it down. We're going back to tips a little bit too, if that's okay.
Totally fine.
So first of all, make a folder to put all of the different reports that you've generated to put into this. And, you know, so when you're breaking this down, you've got the story that it tells us daily sales, weekly patterns, monthly trends, and the yearly picture. But really, these things don't mean anything without comparisons. And that's what ABACUS provides, is the comparison that tells the whole narrative, the whole story. When you're comparing month to month, right, that's a comparison. But when you've got it for the whole industry standard, and that's an amazing thing that ABACUS does. So.
Right. Other things? Yeah. I was just saying nothing else. Okay. One of the things I want to talk about, because I hear this a lot from people, ABA talks a lot about what we do with this data and why it's important to us and why we think it's important for stores, not just in terms of their financials, but in terms of different relationships they have. And then sometimes we'll hear from people, well, we get that, but how do we do it? So I wanted to give you some examples. I have used it in stores in several different ways. I have used the ABACUS report when negotiating with a landlord, 2 different landlords, 2 different times. One, when I first got to Vroman's, we had a stationery store that was not doing well and the rent was outrageous. And I went to the landlord to ask for rent abatement for a certain period of time so I could kind of get my, feet under myself and figure out what I was going to do with this location. And, his impression was that everything was great because every time he went in there, it was great. And you're doing great. Why would you need a rent abatement? So to sit down with him and explain our financials, but explain them in relation to something. So it wasn't just like, well, we're struggling. It's like, you need to understand the whole picture here. Mm-hmm. It's not just us. Like you've signed on with a bookstore. This is now the reality. This is what it means. And it just educated him. Now he turned out to be a very compassionate landlord who was very interested in this and wanted to help us get back on our feet with the store, which we did. Though when our lease was up a few years later, we closed, but it created a good dialogue with him that allowed us to kind of weather some storms along the way. So that's a really helpful example. Another example, we had a branch store in a strip mall with a not compassionate landlord. And we got into, it was basically a game of chicken. Our lease was expiring and he would not come down on the rent. And it was a game of chicken. I was running out of time. I was thinking I'm going to have to close this location because I can't reach an agreement with this guy who's, and it turned out he had been in the store only once and he had been in at Christmas. So he thought we were just printing money, right? Mm-hmm. And to sit down with him and help him understand the model, it was completely foreign to him, the book business, and understanding from ABACUS perspective, it just opened a door that hadn't been opened before, so that I still didn't pay what I wanted to when it came down to the rent, but we were able to reach an agreement that I don't think we would have been able to reach had he not had some education and some context. So for me, it's always been a good dialogue tool. I've used it also with city council. We went through a period where our city council was voting to increase minimum wage, which was a good thing, supported livable wage, but it was 3 steps all in a row within 6 months. And for us, it was going to be about $700,000 that we were going to have to come up with within 6 months. So going to city council to say, I'm not fighting this. I support the increase in minimum wage. I support livable wage, but you've got to give the businesses a chance. You've got to stagger this a little bit and spread out the time, or we're all just going to lay people off. And then you've defeated the whole purpose behind this. And it really kind of was a light bulb moment for them to understand in a different way, and gave us a little bit more grace time than we would have had otherwise, and still achieve the goal of raising minimum wage and livable wage. But it gave me time to make a plan, because it was scrambling that was making me feel like this is not viable. And in that case, what was really great is it then created a relationship with the city council member then, because he really understood the business in a new way. And I found that after that, I saw him at events all the time, and he was constantly promoting the store in different formats. I think he really understood, like, wow, this place is really important. I didn't realize just how fragile this is and how challenging this is. So I think those are the kinds of ways I've used Abacus beyond helping me with my own, store financials to really do better for our business and help our community understand how to support us, because often they want to support, but they're kind of going on gut too, right? Like they're like, oh, we love it. It feels great. Y'all are doing great, but they don't know the realities, and they need that data just as much as you do. So I think that's a really important piece of this. On the other side from ABA now in this position, I use it a lot with the publishers for exactly the same reason. Those of you who had stores during the pandemic, that was a time where we were showing them Abacus data. We were sending them videos of you in your back room, building out distribution centers while your stores were closed, right? All of that information created the dialogue that needed to happen to get you the extra points we got you during the pandemic. And some of those, publishers, at least 2 of those publishers, have kind of continued that extra discount. So it was really important for them to have the data and understand, but us sharing it and them seeing how thin that margin is, and how, some of the examples Lauren shared, where at a point the average net profit had dipped down into a negative number. Knowing you all were facing the pandemic and understanding what was at risk helped us make those arguments and have some leverage. So going back to what I said earlier, if you've been in business a while and you are thinking, I don't really need to do Abacus, in that sense, you do need to be doing Abacus, because it's really going to help us help you in the long term as well. I'm trying to think if I had other examples. I've used it with customers. I've used it with, if you've ever hired a consultant to help with your store and they come from just a broader business background and they don't really understand how this industry works. They can bring a lot of great insight, but they still have to understand kind of the framework and the benchmarks. So that's really helpful as well. Anybody have anything else around that? No.
Okay, so we're
I think
getting.
Stephanie.
No, I feel like there's questions.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Are there?
First of all, I just want to say thank you. My wife and I opened a store in October of 2024, and I'm one of those financial guys, landlord, all that stuff. So I can appreciate that, but it helped me put the budget together to open the store, get the financing, do all the stuff we need to do, and it was surprisingly very close. So thank you for that.
That's great.
One of the questions I have, though, is, and so I more the investor, my wife's more the book reader and the running operator of the store. But she said that our POS system actually submits to you that we didn't need to, but that's not what it sounds like here. We use Basil software.
Yeah, I suspect she is thinking that your POS system is reporting your sales to us, your book sales, which is great, because then that's then being communicated to BookScan. So the national tracking and the data for book sales, which is great, but that is different than Abacus, which is just your financials and all the detail.
All right. Well,
yeah. So good. This is why you come to Winter Institute, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you.
That's great. You just reminded me while Emma's running the mic to the other side of the room. Another way Abacus has helped me is with developers who come to you and say, we desperately want an independent bookstore for our new development. And we love bookstores. It's going to be great. It's exactly what we need. And then you say, do you really want a bookstore or do you want an anthropology? Let's be honest. So showing them the data and explaining, instead of getting into a whole thing with them around the rent, way down the line after you've invested in a business plan and all of this, by saying, great, we would love to do that. We can offer so much. Let us help you understand how an independent bookstore operates first, and where we can bring value to your development, because I think, as you all know, right, some of it's not quantifiable, but to be able to have that richer dialogue up front, rather than you going way down the line of developing a business plan and them going, no way, we're calling anthropology. So I think I've used that several times over the years. And sometimes we've opened something new, and mostly we have not.
I have a question about credit card fees. I know in the KPI session at NEBA this fall, they were talking about using this data to negotiate down credit card fees. They're obviously killing a lot of us. I'm not the only one, but how is the ABA using this data to help with that overall problem? I know you got involved in a lot of lawsuits and as well as the
Credit Card Competition Act.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the word.
I know.
But also like individually as a store, do I have to go through my bookstore uses WorldPay, or do I need to go out and work with the individual card companies that are all represented on that statement?
I'm so glad you brought that up. I can't believe I missed that. We use it a lot to educate representatives. And when we're lobbying for things or advocating for bookstores, Credit Card Competition Act is a great example for us to be able to show up with an ABACUS report and say there is something wrong when these stores, their credit card processors are making more money than they are off their business. And that really gets people's attention really quickly. We just had a small victory in Illinois. I don't know if there are stores from Illinois that, you're not going to have to pay credit card processing fees on your sales tax anymore. It'll be appealed, but we think we'll win in the long term. But that's been the first small victory we've seen. And we've been trying to pass the Credit Card Competition Act we've been working on it 2.5 years now. So, and there's been some shifting lately that we feel we might have some momentum, but that's a great example, because you could go to your credit card processing company and say, okay, you tell me you're giving me the best deal, but I see here in ABACUS that most of my peers are getting a better deal. So is this really the better deal you can give me? And then you can negotiate from there, or it shows you, yeah, there's a better deal out there, whether it's through ABA's relationship with Gravity or some other company. So it's a great example. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, because credit card processors will choose the ones to compare to, right?
Any other questions? Nope. Yep.
How do we get set up with reporting our sales on BookScan? Because that's something that my store doesn't do.
Yes. See, this is why we come to Winter Institute, right? Do me a favor and email info@bookweb.org. That'll reach the membership team, and then they will connect you. There's various ways to report. There's ways you can just upload your data. Some of the POS systems report to us directly. There are several things, but I strongly recommend you do it. We're talking about relationship building and leverage. A lot of publishers don't want to send you author events unless you're reporting to BookScan. And then remember, the data that you report to us not only goes to BookScan, but it then gets sliced and diced, goes into the regional reports and the indie bestseller list, which is a national list, which gets shared with a lot of media outlets. A lot of papers use that as their bestseller list. So then you're able to say to publishers, I report to all of these places, and it just gives you a better standing when you're negotiating for different things with them. So thank you for asking that. So I'm sure there are others in the room who share that, and we encourage you to reach out so we can help you get set up.
What is BookScan?
Sure. Thank you. You're the best person to have in a panel like this, because you're asking the questions that I wouldn't think to slow down about. So BookScan is a platform run by a company called Circana, where they are tracking the national book sales for all the book retailers. So all the book retailers report their book sales to BookScan. And since you all are thousands of stores, we are the conduit for that. Thank you. And it's really, it's important for a lot of reasons. I mean, the publishers can see that data for the indies and helps them forecast, how certain books are going to sell with this channel. And there's lots of different ways that this information is used out in the world.
Right. That's a good example of how other people are using other data.
So we can access BookScan from the ABACUS, or is that a whole separate site altogether?
It's a whole separate thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So email us and we'll get you set up to report. Okay. Where's the anxiety in the room right now as you've heard all this? Give us some insight of what makes you nervous, what still feels like an obstacle. How can we help assuage some of that?
Sorry.
It's good.
So is there a way that like we can make an appointment with you and sit down with our laptop and be like, help me?
Absolutely.
For lack of a better, like just all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. We are happy to meet with people. We do it a lot, and we can look over whatever you're willing to share with us. We can give you some insights. Obviously, we give the usual disclaimers, like, we're not a CPA, we're not a lawyer, all those things. But we do, have some insight to offer, and we'd be happy to help you. I'm also trying to figure out, Lauren and I have been talking about whether we could set up some sessions for people just to join on Zoom, kind of a cohort of sorts, and see how we can help collectively. Because often, as you found in this room, hearing other people's questions is as valuable as what we can offer or other people's answers. So we're looking at that too, and we're thinking we might be looking at that in the spring. But in the meantime, reach out to us.
Yeah, I just ask because like someone like me who's 100% solely operated and doing everything all by myself, sitting down going, just having someone look at it with me would be insurmountably helpful.
To me, it's one of the greatest benefits about ABA. I felt this way as a bookseller. Can be incredibly isolating, right? You're working on your business, you're in firefighter mode, you're so isolated. Even if you know other bookstores, everyone's really busy. Sometimes you feel like you wouldn't reach out to them, but just having a place you can call for help or where we can point you toward help should be one of the biggest benefits you have from this membership.
Yeah, we're booksellers. We're not writers. We don't have to sit in a cave by ourselves.
Right.
I'm curious where the anxiety lies in the room as far as the process versus the analysis. Like, how anxious are we about the process of filling out the survey? Not too anxious? Kind of? Yeah.
Give us 1 second.
Sorry, I have one more question.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You go ahead. We have time.
Okay. So have you guys ever thought about setting up a mentorship program with someone who is like, I have no idea what I'm doing, with the guy it's like, oh, I've been doing this for 20 years. Here's how this works. Because for me, like being just me, it would be so beneficial for me to have another bookseller to be like, I don't understand. And having that person go, okay, here's how this works. I mean, has that ever been anything that you guys have considered doing?
Yeah, 2 things on that. We've been looking the last few years at trying to set up a mentorship program, and I had drafted something out about a month ago that we're going to look at when we get back. We haven't even talked about it yet, so more on that soon. But in the meantime, do you know about the Professional Bookselling School and some of the classes that they offer? Great. So this is why we come to Winter Institute. Back by the welcome desk, between the welcome desk and the ballroom entrance, you will see a table for the Professional Bookselling School, and they have booksellers throughout the industry who they hire to teach classes on different subjects like cost of goods or co-op. Actually, I just realized I think they have a co-op class. So I would definitely recommend you talk to them.
And meet a mentor at Winter Institute.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. This is the most, for those of you new to the industry, you've probably already realized this, but this is one of the most collegial industries I have ever heard of. And people who have come to the bookselling world from other industries have said how remarkable that is. And if you see somebody on a panel or asking a question or has knowledge or just seems receptive to being a mentor to you, introduce yourself and ask questions. I can't speak for everybody, but that's the spirit of our store, and that we have is a spirit of sharing and mentorship. So find somebody and ask for a mentor.
Yeah, and even if it's not a mentor, create your own little cohort. I mean, some of the best advice I've gotten in my 30 years of bookselling is people I met 30 years ago at Book Expo or, 20 years ago at Winter Institute and just became friendly with. And now those are the people I still call to say, hey, have you ever come up against this before? Have you ever dealt with this? And we just share information. So this is such a great environment just to connect with people.
First, I just wanted to say I've been in business for almost 6 years now.
That's great.
And this is our first Winter Institute.
Oh, I'm so glad you made it.
My wife and I are here. And I'm just so happy to be here. And it's great. It's a great atmosphere. Looking really forward to it. But my other question was just back to your request for questions.
Yeah.
for me, it's always been a bandwidth issue.
Yes.
That I really struggle with finding time to do this analysis. And I've been filling out the abacus each year and then looking at the results and not understanding what I'm seeing and not having time to do that. So I've come to the conclusion now that I really need a consultant to help me with that quest. So
it's a very common problem. I think everyone in this room probably can relate on some level to what you just described. I think that happens at Winter Institute a lot too. People come, they have, I've been this person. You come, you get all these great ideas. You have this great notebook, and 6 months later, you're like, what's this? Oh, this is that notebook of great ideas that I have not implemented, right? So I think that makes sense to me. You may decide you want a consultant. You may just meet some people here who you agree to be a study group together and have an accountability group that you're all going to get together and talk about your abacus results and put it into action. You know, it's an investment of time. It's hard. It's the hardest thing to ask of all of you is to invest time when I know you don't have it, but it's some of the best time you can spend. But you're not alone. You're definitely not alone in that.
Yeah, the discipline that we went to, like I said at the beginning, when the three of us were learning this, going through line by line and saying, what am I looking at? How is this an indicator for our business? Is there anything actionable here? And we made some really, I think, smart decisions at the headwaters of what we were doing that put us in the right direction. And then you make that decision and great, we knock that off. Oh, wait, there's something new. And just working our way through. But it sounds simple, but one of our guiding principles are 2 heads are better than 1 and 3 heads are better than 2, because we always learn more in collaboration.
I appreciate too that you threw one of the obstacles in the room. I kind of skipped over that and I wanted to go back to it. I think when we talk to people about why they're not participating in Abacus or why they're not using the data, 9 times out of 10, it's bandwidth, right? We also hear from people who say, I don't want to know the bad news. Which, you know, you could do that for a while, I guess, but it probably doesn't serve you. I think that's obvious. Some people feel like their numbers aren't organized. They don't have the right things. That makes sense. It takes some setup. It takes some gathering. I love Stephanie's idea about a folder and starting to put things in a folder and just getting things figured out. Lauren kind of walked you through the things you're going to need. But I would say bandwidth and not knowing where to start is also a big one, which hopefully you have a little bit of a better sense from this session today. And when you go back to the slides, when you get home and kind of walk yourself through it. And certainly when you get the portal, you'll have a much clearer view if you haven't done it before.
Yeah.
I have one more question here. You all worked at different size stores. Is there something in the Abacus that talks about when you should expand or grow your store or shrink your store? I didn't remember seeing it, but maybe you guys can shed some light on that.
No, but that is something. I mean, you can use that as an indicator to see what is your sales per square foot. And
per square foot.
That's a time when, maybe I should expand because I'm outgrowing my space. But being able to see how that stacks up to other stores.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't speak explicitly to it. I think you all have used it when you opened the second store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we were opening up a second store, it wasn't because of an indicator from Abacus per se, but we were looking for a second location that we needed to do, and a great one popped up. We did just like you, where we had those numbers and we're able to look at the percentages and figure out, okay, what's our sales per square foot? That helped us inform how much inventory we should have. And it was going to be a much smaller size. So then we could look at stores of a comparable size in Abacus as a comparison. We used it for our lease negotiations for our new landlords, who thankfully were wonderful, but still they needed the data to be able to go by.
Yeah, I think it doesn't explicitly speak to it, but I think there are ways you can use it for those purposes. I was using it. I use the dollar per square footage a lot because it's hard. I mean, when you first open to figure out how much inventory am I going to need? What can I expect? Right. I used it for decisions around that stationery store that I mentioned. I mean, eventually I decided to close that store. The person who decided before me to open that store saw that the dollars per square footage in a stationery department within the bookstore was so strong, they decided to open a separate location. From my perspective coming in, looking at it compared to other stores, it made me think about it a little differently. And then watching it over time, I realized it didn't warrant having its own, occupancy expense and payroll expense. It was better to pull it back in. So I have used it for things like that, but it's more connecting different dots, and Abacus becomes one of the dots that you're looking at. Other burning questions? Got a couple on there.
I was wondering, because my experience is, once the Abacus report gets sent back to us, it becomes very like a solitary experience again. And I was wondering if there is capacity on the ABA side that, because you have all the data from all that, to kind of report on trends again and kind of say, hey, here's what we're noticing that bookstores can do, and kind of give folks that who kind of have that, kind of anxiety to kind of, what's the first step? Say, hey, we're noticing that cost of goods sold are high. Have you been contacting your publishers about discounts? Hey, we're noticing price per square foot is high. What does the rent look like in your area? To kind of give people that kind of first step on a big picture level to access their numbers. And maybe that can help get those wheels going, because you get that report and it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And it's a lot of spreadsheets and it's a lot of PDFs, and it can be very overwhelming. And I have not, and I could have missed it, but I don't see the community element after the report is given. Even if it's just a one pager, hey, here's what you can just do on day one.
Highlights.
Yeah. It's like, here's your red lines, here's your green lines, and a bunch of numbers. So I mentioned it to PK a couple of years, but there's a lot going on. But that's the one thing, once the report is out, there should be some level of like community afterwards that we can kind of like rally around.
Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful to hear, because it's interesting. A few years ago, we changed. Those of you who've been doing it a long time may have noticed I do a much more robust executive summary to kind of highlight the things I think are worth noting, but it's more broad stroke, right? And it's long. And then we do the follow-up sessions where people can come. But I like what you're saying. I think even using book selling this week to just summarize for people, like you're saying, and, here are the main takeaways, and here's what that means to you. Am I hearing you? That's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, helpful.
For my 10 millionth question, do you guys have time this week while we're all here for any of us to, because I was trying to schedule appointments with everybody so I could get, all the, is that still an option if we did that this week? Do you guys have that, or is it better if we just wait till we get back and then call you?
Yeah, I wish we did, and I would love to do it, but
no, it's totally fine. That's why I was asking.
Yeah,
so,
thanks for asking.
Have you guys done sessions like that before where you walk people through? Okay.
Yeah, and we'll be doing them online when the survey opens, and then after with people's results. But we've also done like standalone sessions like this where we'll sit and walk people through. So there's a lot of different opportunities, but in your case, reach out to us after winter.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Right, and just check your resources on bookweb.org again. Yeah, we're working on a bunch of different things there. I do have the portal here on the slide. This is the URL. If you type that into the URL, it will bring you to the ABA portal. If you've submitted Abacus, you'll see all of your store data there. Bookweb.org/Abacus is where, that's kind of like our main landing page. You can get all of the prior year reports to Abacus there, the consolidated reports. We have noted here, Measure What Matters. This is the KPIs session that our education department developed last year as part of our fall shows tour. That's available on bookweb.org/education. And always reach out to me with questions. Any questions you have about Abacus?
We have a little time. Is there anything before Lauren moves to the next slide? No. Is there anything we didn't mention that someone in the room uses Abacus for, or you've used Abacus with some success over some particular challenge you were looking at? Okay. Well, tremendous opportunity on the table then.
Coming from a different direction. I'm with a point of sale provider, and I'm just curious if there is a access to the survey so that I could try to take a look at it and help my customers to fill it out, find out so that I would be able to spend time with it to be able to look at the reports that they might use that we have and how they can put this together.
That's interesting. What POS vendor are you with?
Basil.
Nice. There's someone from Basil in the room,
There's a
right?
gentleman in Basil.
Couple people.
Hi.
Yeah, there you go. Hi, Basil people. Reach out to us. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can come talk to me after the session.
Fantastic. Thank you.
One of the other things that we do is, was our question? Okay, no, go ahead.
Oh, just kidding.
Emma's getting in all of her steps today.
I sure am. This may be a question for you guys or someone else in the audience. I am a new store and coming up on my first year. And this is all, so much information and it's incredible. And there's probably a lot of work I need to do to catch up. So I'm wondering if anyone is maybe a little bit ahead of me and you are using Abacus, because I am not, and anything that you thought was helpful when you first got started. Because right now I'm like, whoa, there's a lot here. Where should I start? So if anyone was also in a similar boat where maybe they started to use Abacus after you opened and were in operation, or if you guys have any insight from what people have shared with you about starting a little bit later in the game. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't sound late to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would repeat what I said earlier. There's 3 videos I recommend when you're new, or 3 resources that we provide: decoding the P&L, measure what matters, and there's also an emergency preparedness, which I strongly recommend for every store to watch, because it captures every emergency a bookstore has conveyed to us that they learned something from, and we've captured all of that, which is really valuable.
I was just going to say, I waited forever to do the Abacus thing. And I feel like Abacus is like working out. It's really never a bad time to start. But the more you do it, the better you get at it and the more helpful it is. So the first year it sucked. I entered everything wrong and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. But, by the time you get to year 3, 4, 5, whatever, it just makes a lot more sense. It becomes routine. You kind of know what numbers you already need to put in the system.
Right.
So it just gets easier. So kind of give yourself grace. It's just not going to be awesome the first time because it's just a lot, but it'll get easier for sure.
You're a great example too of someone who's using it and now helping us make it better, because you're giving us feedback that we're going to take back and implement. So I really appreciate that. And I would just let everyone know, we really do want the feedback. And Lauren's coming on board with a very specific mission to improve Abacus. That's right. It's very exciting.
I was just going to respond to you that I didn't even start my store till I was 45 years old. And it was I got laid off. So what am I going to do? So I'm almost 4 years into it and I'm still learning stuff do what is half the time I'm I'm sorry, what is my response? So this is my first year to come here, I'm finding, okay, I had 10,000 questions. No, let me just triple that, because now you find out, and every day is something new. And there's always something, and you're going to feel every day, I have my stuff together. And then you're going to have I have no idea what I'm doing all the time. And I think coming to things like this for me has been incredibly helpful. And I'm only half a day in. So, it's never too late to start anything and still tell yourself, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out.
Great. And you know what? Just look for the spring sessions. I'm going to offer a few of them to just be walkthroughs of the actual survey when it opens.
I was going to say this afterwards, but I think something that would also be really helpful, because I have a background in finance. So even my first year, I kind of understood double book accounting and what a balance sheet is. So if there was like a link or like a spreadsheet, like even just basic accounting principles, that gap
In the
accounting.
works. Yep.
Yeah, because that would give like a really good, like kind of like pre-K into how to even benefit from Abacus. Because as you know, you enter some data on page 2, it pops back up on page 7. And if you have no idea why these two numbers need to add up to be the same as this other number, it could just really throw you off. So that basic gap accounting would be super helpful, I think, like to be accessible.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We're working on that. We're working on a map from your GL to Abacus that's kind of updated and maybe simplified. Yeah, a couple of other resources in the works. So yeah. Thank you. Any more questions for now? So we wanted to end with some commitments to get our ducks in a row. And as you see, this is the third and final of our very funny gifts. Paul, you want to share how you're going to get your ducks in a row?
Oh, my ducks. I got a few ducks I'm looking for with the when this next Abacus comes through. We're, as you might assume, I'm especially going to be paying attention to how the payroll as a percentage of sales has changed because there has been increases in the minimum wage and living wage across the country, and it has in our store as well. And so we want to see how we are in relation to the other stores and how we're performing. Also, our cost of goods. I want to see if it got fixed this year. And actually, I was remembering it's because we track our book and our gift differently because of the percentages. One is a discount and the other one is a markup. And just that simple thing has changed. It changed how our bookkeepers were entering the information. We also changed from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, which was painful.
Mixed reviews.
Very painful.
Some good things.
It was necessary and we had to do it, but it also changed the way we were keeping track of things. So now we've got some oranges thrown in with our apples that we need to pay attention to.
So I'm coming at it from a bookkeeping perspective. So my ducks are making sure all of my year, so my monthlies are in order, and that means reconciliation. Data is meaningless unless it's tied to the bank. So everything needs to be rooted in the bank, right? So that those bank reconciliations and credit card statement reconciliations are really important for that. So that's what that looks like when I'm cleaning up my monthlies in preparation for the yearly. So getting those reconciliations in order.
Yeah. Also looking for outliers. The one example was our occupancy, which shouldn't change year over year, suddenly went and changed. And so having that information to go back to the bookkeeper and say, is this what we expected to see? Are you putting the information in right? That's another indicator, just as a good discipline to have, is to look for those outliers and to draw attention to them, because it could be the garbage in, garbage out. It could be theft. It could be any number of things. But having that trend over time to be able to recognize those outliers is really essential as a business owner.
Yeah. All right. Well, we thought we were going to end early, but we're going to end right on time.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. How did that happen?
You guys asked so many good questions.
So many good questions.
It was all questions.
It was almost like you were plants, but I assure you they weren't.
Yeah.
Really great. So I just want to remind everybody to complete the session survey. The evaluations are very important to us. Please, we do want the feedback. And thank you so much for coming. If you have any other questions, feel free to attack us up here on stage.
Yay. Thank y'all.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!